Hello out there in YouTube land. This is Patti from inkyobsessions.blogspot.com. Hope you'll check that blog out. I just got a little tripod for my iPhone camera, and I'm going to try my hand at a little YouTube video. I'm not going to make this one too long, but I hope you find whatever I put out there at least entertaining, if not informative. Maybe a chuckle here or there, and that would make me happy. So let's get started with the gel plate. A lot of videos out there, and I think I've watched most of them. I'm just a little obsessed about the jelly plate. But I'm going to show you a couple things that I do that I don't really, I haven't really seen exactly this. And I'm just going to work as I talk here, or at least attempt to do that. These are my new favorite paints. They're PBO Studio Acrylics, and they're the Dyna colors. They're a paint with a colored iridescent in it. This one's blue-green, that one's green-blue, yellow-green, red-blue. Really cool colors. Give you a lot of shimmer. But I'm going to try to show you this kind of a cleanup page, I call it, where I lift up, I don't know if you can see that on camera, and get all those different shadows of previous pulls that I did off the canvas, or off the plate rather. Here's another one, which is very random. This one I did on some dotted cardstock just to see how that would come out. I don't know if you can see all that shimmer. The shimmer is my PBOs, and all the shadows of the different previous pulls that were picked up. So I'm going to try to show you how to do that, and in order to do that I need to kind of dirty up the plate and do a few pulls here. So I'm going to get a layer down on the plate with my squeaky, I don't know why this is my second brayer. I got a new one because my other one was squeaking and driving my friends nuts when I art with them. And don't you know, my new one is doing the same thing. I kind of work on newsprint and clean the brayer off here. And let's try, I don't know, this is a new one I got, a 3D design that I got from iStencil. They have some really cool stencils. They're not cheap, but they're really fun. So the first pull, I put a little more paint down than a lot of people do because I want to get a couple pulls out of it. So the first one I put down, light pressure, enough that I know the paper's making contact with the paint, and I can see it curling a little bit, so I know that it's getting wet with the paint a little bit. See what I get? And see that PBO shine? I don't hate that. I like the 3D design on that, so I'm going to set that aside and let it cook for a little bit. And I'm going to pull another one, see if I get anything out of there. And this one I'm really putting that thumb knuckle into it, so I'm pushing the paper actually down into the negative spots on the stencil so that it can get in there. Because if I'm just kind of doing this, the paint's on the plate and the stencil's between it. I want to try to make contact with the paper to the paint that's, again, in the negative spaces. Now, let's see. Sometimes the second print will be a little cooler, I think, than the first one because it's, I don't know, there's more like natural shading to it, I guess. Yeah. See how it looks like it's actually shaded around the edges where the paint's pulled up on those the edges of each of the designs. So here's the first pull and the second pull. Now I'm going to do a little sandwich here. I like to grab what's left on the plate, which will be the negative of the stencil, and I'm going to make a little sandwich here with whatever paint's left over on the stencil. Don't want to waste that. That'll make a nice background. I usually layer them like maybe 2, 3, sometimes even 4 different designs before I call it done. And I don't know, are they ever really done? But I may get paint, I may not. And I did. I got, oh, that's actually a pretty nice print. And here's what I picked up off the plate. So on this side I have negatives, the reverse print I should say. This is all the positive space on the stencil that held onto the paint. So, and I have that on both sides in different, this one's a little bit brighter That one's a little more ghostly. So I'm going to set those aside. And let's do, I don't know, let's do something else. Something that's going to really contrast so you can see it. This is a PBO in red blue, which is really becoming my favorite. It's an awesome color. It's bright red paint with some blue iridescence in it. Which turned, you know, when it catches the light, it kind of has a purpley sheen to it. And this is one of my favorites too. This is called Violet Blue, which to me looks more like a fuchsia. I guess it's a violet. I don't know. What do I know? I don't name the colors, and there's a good reason for that. So I'm going to mix these in, cover my plate. And again, it's probably more paint than you see people put down on a lot of videos, but I know that, and I do that for a reason. So, this is another eye stencil one I just got. I like this one too. So, I don't know if you know any pink alligators, but what the heck. Let's give this one a go. And let's take this lighter one and double it up with the darker. I say darker, I mean the first pull is usually a little bit more saturated than the following pulls. I like it. Not my favorite. I don't know if those two designs were kind of too much alike as far as the shapes and the white space between them, but I don't hate it. So let's try. I'm going to take this one, see if I can pick up what's left. And I'm not really putting much thought into what I'm doing right now. I just basically want to get my plate dirty so I can show you the fun part. And for the purpose of what I wanted to show you, this is just, you know, regular old standard kind of stuff. See, that second print is really, I think, kind of cool. I get some texture around it. Looks like they've been, each little patch of that design looks like it's been outlined. So I hope you can see this the way I see it. So I'm going to take a clean piece of paper and grab this. Give that, oops, a little crooked. Oh well, it's only paper. Not too much of a panic if I screw anything up, or is there ever really a screw up in this stuff? You just kind of cover it up. And I find that a little pop of black on anything really makes everything else pop, which is one of the reasons I tried this printed cardstock. It was a black and white cardstock, and I was playing with that. Ooh, that's a really cool. I think I showed you that earlier. That was a kind of a cleanup print that I'm going to do shortly. Here's the stencil on the polka dotted paper. It's kind of cool. Oops, avalanche. All right, let's see what we got here, if anything. Oh, a little bit of a shadow there. And this one feels like it's pretty tight on the page, which means I'm going to get almost everything off of there. So I got that reverse print. So now, let's see, what can we do? Let's do something a little more organized and smaller on there. There's my little dot stencil. Oh, or do I? Yeah, let's do that. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, no, you know what? Let's do these circles. This is a fun one. Yum. Stencil girl, thank you. Let's go with black now. Let's put some black over top of this. I go through a lot of black paint with this stuff because I think that just really finishes any of them off. Excuse me, that was the paint, not me. No, really. It was. Totally entertain myself when I'm down here. At least when I'm videoing, it doesn't feel like I'm talking to myself. I'm talking to you. Okay. Now this one I'm going to have to push a little harder than I would on my normal first pull because the areas that are negative are kind of skinny. So if I just lay this down and lay paper on top of it, it's not going to really get down there, you know, get through there. So I need to encourage this to make contact with the paint. So let's take, what do I have here? Let's take one of the ones I've done double duty on here. This one, how it looks now. And now watch the difference when I add that little pop of black. I just love the little pop of black on there. Pushing pretty good. Get in those little skinny spots. I can feel it making contact because see that paper curling? It's getting a little wet with paint. This paint dries so fast you can really pump these puppies out when you get in a groove. Why, Viola. Love it. Okay, now I can probably get a second pull. Let's try this. The one I did the other night with cardstock, and adds a little bit more black in that. This is kind of flimsy cardstock, but that'll make it easier to push down in the holes. I love this design. I'm a circle kind of person, freak, I guess you could say. I put circles in almost everything that I touch. I don't know what that means about me. I should probably look that up, but there's a good chance I don't want to know. Oh, that's a little bit of yumminess. Yeah, I can do that. So now this one is really going to be, I think, oh, no, this one is a little bit too much. This one I like better with this stamp design. This is a little bit too much background for me. So I'm going to do a double sandwich. I'm going to put this side down because it's going to grab all that positive space. It's going to be a lot of black on there. And I'm going to flip this one over. This is kind of like a Big Mac of jelly prints, kind of a double layered sandwich. And this again has a lot of paint on it because of all these positive areas. I'll give that a really good, don't tear the stencil. You got to be careful with some of those little pieces are really frail, but that's what makes the design really cool. You just have to be not such a klutz. And good smush, very technical terms I like to use. Smush being one of them. Ooh, see that paint's kind of getting a little thick on my stencils and pulling off in hunks, but I think in mixed media we call that texture. So there's a little textured shadowy print of that stencil. And this one's going to have a lot of black on it. But kind of cool in that it hid some of that turquoise, aqua, whatever we want to call it, and you see it through the circle, so it kind of makes it look like the circles were colored. So now, I have a lot of goodness on this that I'm going to try to lift off. So I need to make sure that it's dry, because if it's still wet, it's not going to really all lift off of there. Sometimes you'll get a lot of it off, but it's better if it's dry. So I'm plugging in my heat tool. Pardon the roar. Oops. Dries really quickly. I just want to make sure it's really, really dry. So let's see. Let's do, I usually use the Golden's liquid fluid acrylics in Titan Buff when I pull these off. I was using white at first, and that's okay too. I mean, you can put any color down here if you wanted to. It doesn't really matter. But I think this just gives, especially when I'm using white paper, gives it a little bit more to look at, because white on white, you don't really see a lot sometimes, but you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to do, I don't know what I call this thing, kind of a double layered cleanup pull thingamajiggy. I don't know what to call it. But this is the part that I said I haven't seen done yet. I'm sure somebody's doing it. I don't claim to have invented anything. But I take a stencil now. Instead of just, a lot of people now would just put on a piece of paper and try to pull that whole thing off, which is what I did with this. Still looks pretty cool. Hopefully you can see that different shimmer and the copper and all those iridescent PBOs that are layered in there, and then the shadow of the flourish stencil, and you can see some circles from another stencil, some squares, and the urban jungle stencil in there from Stencil Girl. That's what a whole page looks like. However, if I take a stencil that's got a lot of negative space, and I really like this one. This is a Julie Faye Fan Balzer stencil called Wonky Circles, which I really love. And circles, hello. I use it a lot, actually. Put that down between the paper and the plate, and then really give it a good smush, because not only do I want to get paint on this paper, I want to make it adhere in such a way that it's going to suck off all those shadowy designs that have built up and dried on the plate. Now when you go from print to print, like you know, just the single prints, that's dry enough, and when you pull, you don't get very much of that off of there unless you really intend to. And I like to hit those edges because there was a lot of really gooped up goodness over here. I like to really put that joint of my thumb down in there and push the paper in those circles and along those edges to try to get everything I can. And I take a while doing this because it seems like the longer I do this and the longer I wait for that to adhere, that I get a cleaner pull, meaning I get everything that I'm going for when I do that on there. I don't leave much on the plate at all. So, give it a little peeky. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's see what we get. Okay, not hating that either. But since I didn't do a whole lot of pulls, there's not a whole lot built up on the plate to pull off. But you can see that in the negative parts of the stencil where I put the Titan buff, all those black shadows of the circles and the animal skin one, and there's little bits of the 3D that I can see. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. And just little tiny little peaks of shimmer that pulled up the little bit of the PBOs that were left on there. Here you can see a little bit of that, and down here. So that's what you get when you do that. Now you just put a black flourish over top of that, and that looks pretty daggone cool, actually. So now what this means is there's another pull underneath the positive parts of the stencil. So I think, no, that's not going to show up very well. I'm going to take a clean piece so you can really see what I get. Pull this off, sandwich, press that down really well. I probably will get very little off of this. It seems like the stencils that have very little positive space like this one does, like these circles are so thin, seems like the paint dries even faster on those. But stencils with a lot of positive space like this, that paint stays wetter on there for some reason. I guess it's just the surface area that's exposed. Don't claim to be a scientist. So I probably won't get like anything on this top part of this paper, but voila, I was right for once. So I should get the reverse of this, and the white space on this, if it pulls properly, will come up as the pattern on here with the smoky colored designs in those little rings of color. And there it is. So not fantastic on its own and with these colors, but when you know what, let me rifle through my stash from last night. I had a pretty couple cool ones that came out last night. And you can see I still have a little bit of a print there. I'll leave that there, and I'll just keep going, and I'll do that again and again. But let me see if I can find an example of where I did that. Now, I double-sided these. Watch, it's probably going to be on the bottom of one of these, and I have to go through the stack twice to find. Here's one. So you can see the same stencil, the wonky circles, underneath that black flourish, and see all that, the luster of those, the PBO metallic paints. And here's a little bit of the animal skin print that was on the plate. What else is on there? It's such little pieces of previous pulls that you can't really see a whole lot of exact pattern to know what it is. This one I happen to know that was the animal print in there. That's pretty clear. But that's an example of what I'm trying to show. Oh, here's another example, but I put layers on top of this. So, I don't know if you can see that sheen of that gold crackle on there. It looks pretty cool. And in person, this looks like stained glass with that shimmer underneath of it, of the PBOs. I don't know if you can see that, and see how the dots kind of change from blue-green and green-blue because I mixed those two colors together. But as it moves through the light, hopefully the camera picks that up. But that's another one. But you get the idea, hopefully. Let's see. A little flip through. Hopefully you can see these. I don't even know where I am in frame, and I know I'm going fast. Now here's a mop-up, cleanup page that I did where I pulled the whole page without a stencil and then just put this black circle stencil on top of it. And you can clearly see the pentagons and the circle stencil that was used before on there. And this blue-ish brick kind of design was a little ghost of one of the, I think down this way you can see, well, I can, hopefully again you can. The pattern of that grid was another stencil that I did in that blue-black PBO. Not my favorite. But these were just, here's one. I used the pentagon stencil with the little circles in between. And, oh, that's the good example of the PBOs, really pulling off a crusty part of the page there. Hopefully you can see some of that shimmer. And a lot of the coppery shimmer in this real, I don't even know what that was, but that's a, oh, you know what it is? It's an Artist Seller Cathedral remnant on there. Love Artist Seller stencils. So there's that. Here's another one. Oh, this is the one that reminded me of the stained glass. It's all coming back to me now. I'm older, got a little memory issue. This, especially these three, and even some of them down here, picked up so much of the PBO underneath that crackle kind of gives it a stained glass sort of a number going on there. Hopefully I'm not making anybody seasick. Trying to show you that shimmer. And I thought about putting a little black plop on there, but I really didn't want to hide any of that. So, and I really don't know what I'm going to do with all these. This is a minuscule example of what I've done. I think I'm going to make a book. I bought a cinch machine with a gift certificate my hubby got me for the Queen's Ink. And maybe just bind them all and make it a big book that I can flip through and go ooh, ah, and if I want one for a collage or to make a card or something, I'll just rip that puppy out of there and have at it. Here's one. If you can see the rings, that's this print. Pulled out and mixed in with a bunch of other random stuff. That black on the top is that Urban Jungle Stencil Girl stencil, which I don't know, that really appeals to me. My all-time favorite stencil, I believe, is Aboriginal, which is a Julie stencil. That's the coppers. Only picking up part of that. I'll find a good one and show you. Oh, here's a good example. Again, with the wonky circles. Blue-green mix with a little bit of the yellow-green in there for the dots. And it makes it look in one pull like you've got a lot more layers than you really do because of everything that this picks up. Let me breeze through here. Breezing. Oh, stuck to the plate. I thought for sure I had some Aboriginals in here.